Bro, we're already live. Okay, we're live. Okay. Hi, Shaun. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
How's it going, Grace? Good morning.
I'm good. I'm glad that you start your morning with talking to AI.
Yeah, no, it's pretty great.
I know.
Very helpful.
Exactly. I want to start with I feel like you have such a, stellar resume as like you literally have like all the big tech logos or like big like AI logos on top of your resume. Maybe we could start with to give the people a little bit of your background. So, the most recent job or like the current job you have is like you are managing director of Mercor, and then you kind of like you're like one of the first like 5 employees, and you help the company go from like 1 million to 100 million in annual revenue run rate. With like it's just like basically you help the company scale super fast within a year. Why don't we talk about like what were some core lessons that you've learned early on in your career, kind of shape you into who you are today?
Absolutely. So, maybe just as a quick background for those who are less familiar with myself, um, I got my degree in software engineering, and then I was as one of those engineers that loved people, and I kind of
Mhm,
had like a whole identity crisis after like lots of software internships of like what roles exist out in the world that combine being a good people person with a good
mhm,
engineer. And so I found an early stage startup um, early on where I was like kind of their first customer facing engineer. And then I joined Scale in 2019 as their kind of first customer facing for deploy. There's lots of job
mhm,
titles that describe this role, but basically helping all of Scale's customers get their LiDAR data and self-driving car data in the Scale so we could label it.
mhm,
And then basically through that time, built a lot of credibility with our customers and operations team. It turns out being the engineer building all the tasks is very helpful to understand the operations and customer requirements.
mhm,
And so I got the opportunity to go lead Scale's computer vision engagements from the operations perspective. And that really opened my eyes to like operations overall. I
mhm,
don't think most, if you asked me like a couple years ago, like, Shaun, you want to do operations? I think the answer would have been no, to
mhm,
be really honest. But I did find the joy in it, and I went to OpenAI and happened to lead their human data operations. And this is the team at OpenAI that basically sits within research. And anytime a researcher needs data from humans, well, humans are a pain in the butt. So they have to go to a team basically to kind of figure out what vendors do I go to, how to go pay these people, how do you ensure
mhm,
quality. I led those efforts. And
mhm,
the way we labeled data from just a couple years ago to my time at OpenAI had already changed dramatically. And at
mhm,
Mercor now, we are really kind of trying to be on the frontier of if you want to make AI better, what people do you need to be working with? How do you go find those people? How do you engage with them? And that's kind of what's led to this like really crazy success at Mercor so far.
For sure. I wonder, okay, so maybe we could start from like Mercor's like current business and business
Yeah.
model. So like you are the person who's like helping them onboard them to like OpenAI. Why don't we talk about like at the beginning, how did you kind of like find this group of people? And then obviously they were like really small as well. And like
Yeah.
now they're huge, but I guess like can you walk us through like, what were you seeing back then? And then like how like more core as a business, I think like we have like privately chat about this, but like I guess like maybe for the audience who is like not super familiar with, obviously it's like one of the hottest startups right now. But why don't we talk about the business model as well as like just um like the product itself?
Yep. Yeah. So maybe I'll talk about how I found them at OpenAI and why I
Mhm,
brought Mercor into OpenAI in the first
mhm,
place, and then we
mhm,
can kind of talk through some of the changes and with the way Mercor operates and why that's been leading to some really cool outcomes for us.
mhm,
So traditionally, anybody that can kind of follow instructions and like be engaged could improve AI. Just
mhm,
being a human was sufficient.
mhm,
But we started to see more and more specific and niche requests for like industry experience, academic experience, just kind of across the board. We wanted people that had specific types of experiences in their life.
mhm,
And as you know, I was going on one time our math team at OpenAI was like, Shaun, I want really good math people. And I was like, okay, we got like master students, PhD students, we got a math team already. Like, no, Shaun, like really good math people, like internationally ranked math Olympiad people.
mhm,
And I was like, oh, well, I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know how I'm going to like go
mhm,
like find these people and like bring them into like an engagement for like labeling your data.
mhm,
And Brendan, the CEO of Mercor, had tried to email me several times before this, but one of his emails had some great timing, and I was like, "Hey, Shaun, we have 25 IMO medalists in the International Math Olympiad, and they can all start within 24 hours. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, actually, I am interested. This is a very specific solution to the problem I had no other solution for.
Mhm,
And of course, while Brendan was excited to start within 24 hours, OpenAI required a bit more time. But that was the start of our relationship, was kind of going from this pretty niche request, and then the OpenAI team realizing, hey, well, when we have other niche requests, which we had a lot of, that was kind of the starting to be the standard MO that
mhm,
OpenAI had. Um, they could keep going back to Mercor, and we were able to fill these pretty bespoke, high caliber sourcing requests.
mhm,
And at that point, then I made the decision to leave OpenAI. I kind of did a
mhm,
summer of consulting, as one does, trying to go figure out what's next on that side. And I just really enjoyed working with the Mercor team and their energy.
mhm. Why don't we talk about, like, I guess, like, how did they fill the role?
Yeah. So one of the big unlocks was that for the first time in human history, we could actually use AI to have a non-sucky human conversation, like a case study,
Mhm,
like a 25, 30-minute video interview with AI. And
mhm,
so it's no longer basically just you know, here's 5 preset questions, type your
mhm,
response, ChatGPT will grade it. It's like an actual full-on dynamic case study. Like, Grace, tell me about your experience running podcasts and events and all this. And
mhm,
it would be like talking to you about it and getting to know you.
mhm,
And you can have a similar conversation with everybody else that is applying for positions.
mhm,
And with this, 25, 30-minute case study interview of sorts, we have a much richer signal to say, hey, here are people that are likely meeting the job requirements, that can have a conversation, that are good at their work, that are passionate about their work. And start to bring a lot of those factors into the decision making process about who we work with. The other part was that, frankly, just the traditional recruiting model of finding these people started to be pretty broken. The
mhm,
reality of a lot of our human data projects at OpenAI and other labs is we need someone for about 4 to 6 weeks. This is not a full time job. It's not a job that I can go pay $10,000 to go find one person. I basically need people in like 3 days. From the time I have an idea to the time I need
mhm,
people like working the data, it's like 3 days.
mhm,
And I only need them for a month. And so you have this
mhm,
very challenging like recruiting dynamic where anytime you
mhm,
add a human to the process, it basically becomes so slow and so expensive, it just kind of doesn't work anymore. And so Mercor really was trying to go automate that, at least the first step of the interview process, to get all the human elements that are really slow and tedious out of it.
mhm. I wonder, so I guess, like, how did they kind of, like, even like, at the beginning to onboard people to actually take these interviews? Because, obviously, I feel like for the 25 math Olympian, like, I don't think they're
Right.
sitting at their home be like, "Yo, let's take this interview with AI."
Yeah, yeah, no,
Maybe
that's
they
fair.
are, who knows? But yeah.
Yeah, I think there was kind of two approaches. One was to just actually be more involved in the communities that we wanted to source in. And
Mhm,
so the reality is, yeah, of course, you kind of have this culture problem. People aren't just going to wake up one day and want to take a Mercor interview. Um, we need to actually kind of engage people, describe the opportunities. Like, hey, what's interesting for a lot of people is the opportunity to go contribute to a frontier AI model.
mhm,
Hey, if you want to be paid well, be paid hourly, use your expertise um, to help be on the frontier of AI. That is really exciting for people. And so we
mhm,
kind of had to tighten that pitch overall. And I think, Brendan and the team at the time were already doing a pretty good job of like, hey, how do you go connect with these communities and kind of make that story?
mhm,
But when the opportunity comes up, like, hey, this is working with like one of the top AI labs in the world. People are
mhm.
like, oh, yeah, okay, I am intrigued. That's cool.
I wonder, so, like, at the beginning, so I guess, like, how did they heard about this in the first place? Do you have to code pitch or, like, AI pitch these
Yeah.
people? Or how like, how do you kind of, yeah, I guess, like, maybe we'll start with, like, how do we find them to, like,
Yep.
pitch?
Yeah. To be honest, there wasn't like any like super secret sauce. People still need to go find jobs and opportunities the same way they have been before when you're starting something new. So there's like some LinkedIn ads,
Mhm,
some other things along these lines. So
mhm,
um, and a lot of people honestly were pretty skeptical of like, wait,
mhm,
here's a job posting on LinkedIn, but you're telling me I need to go take an interview with an AI. Is
mhm,
this even like a real job? Is this a real thing? And our
mhm,
honestly, for a small, like, Series A, even less than Series A startup, the first challenge was just like, yes, this is actually a real thing. It's not
Mhm,
spam. We're not gonna steal your data. We're not training something crazy with all, like, your interview conversations. We're just trying to match you to jobs. And
mhm,
so, like, we had to really step up our credibility and our brand presence to make sure that people knew that we were serious,
mhm.
about this.
I wonder, I guess, like, another question
Yeah.
is, like, maybe if you could describe the interview process, and then also, obviously, on the Mercor website, there was, like, different type of interview from, like, all different kind of industries. How do
Yes.
you guys kinda scale that process to making sure that the interview was kind of, like, in depth, but also,
Mhm.
um, it was kind of very fastly spin up into, like, various different industries?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in general, when you apply at Mercor, we'll have you upload your resume, maybe or LinkedIn profile, what just to kind of get to know you and your experience. And then the interview is actually going to be taking the job posting and your resume, your interview experience, and it will start to actually tailoring the interview to your experience, and the job to try to actually ask questions about this overall.
Mhm,
Um, we realize that this kind of format actually is very flexible to like any kind of domain as you're highlighting here. And so whether
mhm,
you are in finance or software or, consulting, whatever the case may be, the same format and the same kind of layout of the interview can work. And one
mhm,
of the really interesting parts is as opposed to having a human recruiter um, have to know all these areas, the AI actually can be a pretty reasonable interviewer in consulting and finance. I would be a
mhm,
terrible finance interviewer. I've never worked in finance in my life. And so if you ask
mhm,
me to go do a finance interview, I
mhm,
would have a really hard time knowing what's BS, what's real, and like what should I be looking for. But
mhm.
we can actually have the interview kind of basically score and ranks on specific questions. Here are good answers, here are less good answers, then highlight the candidates at the top.
I wonder, so I wonder, like, when you guys are, I guess, like, designing the product for the mask, I guess, when at the beginning you guys landed OpenAI as, like, one of the core clients, and, how do you guys, like, think about charging the client? And, like, I guess, like, how do you think about pricing the model? Also, like, I also wanna hear your take on, like, OpenAI's, like, creating their own job board, obviously, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what does that entail for Mercor or, like, other,
Yes.
communities or,
Yeah,
like, other companies?
yes. Um, great question. So in general, there's actually a couple dynamics that I think are important to understand about when you work with a research lab and you're trying to go
Mhm,
provide experts to them.
mhm,
The previous way was often kind of on a per task basis. So if you do a unit of work and say, hey, I've answered the question, I've drawn the boxes and the images, I've ranked the sentences,
mhm,
um, you get paid per thing that you do.
mhm,
Now, the challenge of generative AI is that we really want you to prioritize the like creating the long, hard prompts and responses. If you
mhm,
speed through it, we will like your responses that you're going to train ChatGPT with are going to be like pretty trash,
mhm,
to be honest. And so we actually need someone to be incentivized to take the time and do a good job.
mhm,
The other part is that oftentimes historically, if you had poor quality, we just wouldn't pay you.
mhm,
That is a thing about the space before. Like, hey, the quality of your task determines how much you get paid. So you are incentivized to do higher quality tasks, ideally.
mhm,
But with generative AI, we don't have a mathematical way of knowing how good your stuff was.
mhm,
And so it's actually not really reasonable or feasible to say that we want to pay you for your quality. We just need to entrust that you are intrinsically a high quality person that produces high quality work and is engaged. And so that really kind of flips everything on its head to how you go source and engage the underlying talent from how it was done before.
mhm,
And so we really kind of went talent first on almost everything that we were doing. The other part is that, to be honest, all the research labs, I mean, these have teams have like pretty savvy procurement teams,
mhm,
and they already knew exactly the ins and outs of all these data annotation providers, how much they were paying people hourly, all the kind of the tricks of the industry, and so we wanted to be very transparent in how we were operating, both with the talent and the labs. So, like, hey, we'll take a fixed percentage. It's this. The labs know how much everybody's getting paid. They know when they're getting paid, etc. And that was kind of a big part of our story initially.
mm.
I think you had one
I
more question though, but oh yeah, about the OpenAI stuff there too. Did
Mhm.
you have a question on that part though?
Yeah, so, like, I guess, like, one of my questions is like, I think a lot of people can actually do this. Like, why you?
Mm,
How do you guys like kind of think about like the positioning or the edge? Obviously, the Mercor team is like very smart. I've like went to the CEO and the CTO's talk separately, but
yeah,
obviously, I think they're very charismatic and like um having a lot of like really unique experience building things early on. But I guess
yeah,
like, how do you think about the building the edge for
yeah.
the company? Would it be like the AI mode or like what is like the thing that you feel like set you guys apart versus like, OpenAI started actually a Mercor under OpenAI?
Yeah. So I think maybe two things I think are kind of our moat.
Mhm,
Early on, we realized the importance of like a data flywheel
mhm,
effect that would happen, where as we actually are placing people in roles,
mhm,
it's really critical that we get feedback about how well that person did. So
mhm,
our interview is not just kind of vibes based of like, oh yeah, this person sounded really cool. We actually are
mhm,
now looking at when we have a high recommendation of somebody for a role, and then they actually like get like that role does not work out.
mhm,
Um, what went wrong? What did we miss in the interview? Did we not ask a question? Did we not rank an answer or kind of on this side? There's a data flywheel to create here of placing people in roles, seeing how they do in the roles, and then tailoring the interview, the questions asked, and the ranking accordingly. We already had this flywheel started in a pretty material way. We've been working on this basically since the beginning of Mercor, knowing that this flywheel is
mhm,
going to be so critical. And so at this point, I think we already have a pretty sophisticated interviewer and a
mhm,
pretty sophisticated way of applying those rankings and recommendations to make sure that we are matching people in the best way possible.
mhm,
The other part is just the network and the reputation. So much of these things are actually like reputation based.
mhm,
When people know that, hey, they'll get paid consistently on time in a clear, transparent way,
mhm,
they recommend their friends. Our biggest driver of talent on the network actually right now is referrals. So as opposed to having to do like the LinkedIn job posts or pay for advertising, we just send out referral emails to people who have similar experience. Like, hey, do you know anybody else has experience that might be good for this job posting? We'll pay a referral bonus, usually in the hundreds of dollars, if we go hire that person. And like that is now our big kind of incentive. So the market and the culture and the reputation, I think, of our marketplace really is not to be taken for granted, I guess, on that side.
for
Um,
sure.
yeah, I think the OpenAI wanting to apply AI to hiring makes sense. Honestly, I think this is probably not just specific to hiring, but I think OpenAI is like, hey, we're OpenAI. We can apply technology in every way. And I
Mhm,
think also within OpenAI, it's celebrated when we can use AI to go take on a workflow that was previously really challenging. It'd be kind of weird if like no one on the recruiting team at OpenAI used AI in their job.
mhm,
And so I think it's kind of a natural response of like, hey, how do we go one for the world at large, kind of
mhm.
help up level how people think about AI readiness and AI, savviness. I think it was kind of what was mentioned so far in the news about this. Um, but also, I think there is an excitement of like, hey, for any recruiting team or any function within OpenAI, we want to be best in class at using AI ourselves.
For sure. I wonder, like, so how do you think about, I guess like there's like two part that you mentioned. One part is um, like there's like the flywheel, and then there's like the other parts like the reputation or like the sophisticated ranking interviews. Like
Mhm.
maybe we could talk about like how do you guys rank the interviews or how do you process the information? Let's say, like you and I, let's say like an AI chat with me about my experience on running
Mhm.
my own company and
Yeah.
like share a bunch of like examples and is there like process based on keywords, process based on my emotions, or how do you kind of like process on these like both qualitative and the quantitative
Yeah.
data, basically?
Yeah. So a large part of it is the words that you're saying
Mhm,
right now. So um, I think they're still probably on the frontier of like, hey, do you try to use some like fancy analysis of emotional state or other stuff?
mhm,
Honestly, I think that's still one. We need plenty to figure out some ethical considerations of that, and two, I think the technology is probably not
mhm,
quite there, even on the frontier, to be honest, yet.
mhm,
Um, we basically, it's not like a keyword matching though. I think it is like, hey, if you were to basically provide transcripts of interviews, you can actually go like fine tune a model that says, hey, I want to basically select which person has the highest kind of likelihood of being successful. And what we did to initially kind of get this started was we actually had human recruiters say, hey,
Mhm.
you have access to these people's resume with their name and kind of any identifying data removed. You have access to this interview transcript. Read the transcript, look at the resume, and go figure out which person you would rank.
Mhm.
And so this was actually a critical unlock for us, where we were able to see when we have our AI rank this, one, where the disagreements with human recruiters, and then importantly, who does it better? The human recruiters looking at the transcript and the resume, or the AI? And we were
Mhm.
able to actually prove that we were able to outperform the human recruiters at finding the people that did best on the job because we have access to how they did. Like, did this person work out? How many hours did they work? What was their overall like outcome on the job? We have that data, so we can
Mhm.
look at all the recommendations made from a human recruiting team and our AI recruiting team, and then kind of compare. And that was a really exciting moment, I think, for us at Mercor.
Wow. Okay. So how do you like, I guess, like, how is the AI kind of different from the human recruiter? I guess, like, what do you feel like that's like the part that AI would be more superior?
Yeah. So I think there's maybe two parts. One, maybe three. One is that the AI has a lot more context about different subjects and fields than a human does. And
Mhm.
so while a recruiter generally is good at understanding like maybe the scope or work required or knowledge required to do a
Mhm.
certain outcome, the AI can probably do it better. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to like kind of keeping up with industry specific terms or
Mhm.
kind of knowing all these nuances about, even as a software engineer, I don't know about every language. So if you describe
Mhm.
something in a different language, I would have a hard time knowing how that compares apples to apples with somebody else's experience.
Mhm.
The AI can do this pretty well, actually. So it always
Mhm.
has the context about the different domains more so than a human recruiter can. I think the other part can be like, what signals do you pick up on, right? If you have a transcript, you and I can go read this transcript together and come up with different like highlights of, hey, I think this is a really cool experience. So this is a good point for why this person's like doing well versus
Mhm.
this other person. And you basically end up with like, hey, what do you highlight and use for your ranking? And so the AI kind of can do its AI thing of like, hey, I'm picking up on those signals that actually lead to a better outcome versus a human just has like our, you know, human intuition about what
Mhm.
parts are most impressive and how those compare overall.
Mm, for sure. I wonder, so, like, you basically said, like, 2 things. One is, like, the AI have more context, like, they are expert in XYZ, and then they have generally more context, and then the other part is, like, um, signal highlights,
Yeah.
and, like, I guess, like, can you unpack that a little bit? Like, give us an example of, like, let's say, what would I say in an interview that, like, AI would pick up on as, like, a highlight?
Yeah. It might be like how you explain an idea. So like if I ask you about your
Mhm.
experience, like, hey, tell me about how you got started hosting podcasts and what you look for in guests. Maybe what you say then, and if I ask that similar question to another person, it's like, oh, actually, Grace had a much more articulate answer. She provided examples.
Mhm.
She clearly has, higher caliber folks. Blah 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 blah. And so you can
Mhm.
start to kind of figure out what of those things actually matter. And like, hey, is it the caliber of people? Is it Grace's preparedness on this stuff? Is it her experience before doing podcast? Like, what is it about this that actually resonates? Because all three of those things maybe could be like fair game to kind of say, hey, this is a highlight, but which of those three highlights actually make a difference when it comes to on the job performance? And
Mhm.
so you start to kind of get that signal of like, huh, okay, well, you and I would have our own intuitions about which matters the most. But can we
Mhm.
start to actually use AI to figure out which signals, when we kind of can do these comparisons of the whole
Mhm.
interview, start to
Mhm.
kind of stand out and make the most or the biggest
Mm.
difference?
I wonder, so, like, maybe we could talk about the business model side of
Yeah.
things. So, like, obviously, I think we briefly touch up on this, but, like, I guess, like, one of the major draw is, like, you guys have partnerships with all the, like, top AI firms now, like, a lot of different other companies as well. I guess, like, maybe we could talk about the land and expand motion. Like, at the beginning, it was, like, OpenAI, and, at what point do you, like, branch out to, like, other companies? And then when OpenAI succeed, like for at the beginning with like the 25 gold medalists for like math. Um, how I guess like how do you kind of like gain the like at what kind of traction you kind of use it to sell to like other companies?
Yeah. Um, so I think maybe there's kind of two different parts. There's like a hey,
Mhm,
for other AI labs, what is that story? And then like beyond
mhm,
AI labs, how do we kind of expand there?
mhm,
Was one part more what you had in mind than the other?
mhm. Mm, I think the thing is like for I think how do you get like it's kind of like a chicken or egg problem, right? So like you
Mhm.
have to get like I want to say the best chicken, but like you have to have like the best like company to hire from
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
crew, and then like the other parts like you have to onboard or like just like try to attract
Mhm.
some of the most like talented people. So you have to do that at the same time. I guess
Yeah.
like how did like the flywheel start kind of rolling
Yep.
at the beginning? Because obviously, let's say like Brandon email you 20 times at OpenAI. Like, first of all, how does he even know who to email? Just because I think that's like a myth at like
Yeah.
every
Well, I think there are lots of just on that one, like VC connections. VC can be helpful at the
VC
intros.
can be helpful. You heard it here.
Yes.
But okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, but how do we kind of I think I get what you're asking now. So I think part of the experience I was able to take is like I kind of saw, the ways that most people were doing data annotation at these labs at scale. And I was
Mhm,
able to see the really, honestly pretty material differences in how Gen AI at the frontier was being shaped. And so when I was kind of describing like, hey, well, my dream vendor, if
mhm,
I'm at a lab and I dream up the best vendor possible,
mhm,
how do they operate? What is their pricing model? How do they go do these things? How do they kind of engage their talent? How would I at a lab engage with the people that Mercor finds? I was able to actually articulate like basically, hey, here is exactly I think how the future of these vendors should operate and will
mhm,
need to operate to actually kind of keep pushing the frontier. And
mhm,
so as Brendan and I were getting intros to other labs, after I left OpenAI, I was like, hey, that story really resonated. I was like, hey, yeah, all the pain points I was seeing at OpenAI, turns out other labs were seeing the same pain points.
mhm,
And I think people are kind of ready. They kind of knew that everything is different now, but they
mhm,
weren't really sure like how to apply it. Like, hey, I know the old way doesn't work, but I don't know what the new way kind of is. I think we
mhm,
were able to come in at Mercor with a pretty strong opinion about here is how a vendor should kind of operate, find people, pay people, engage with researchers, etc.,
mhm.
and kind of basically build the vision around that.
I have so many questions about the researcher piece. So, like, I know that researchers are very important in the AI society, but I guess like who is important and then like who will actually turn out to be a great and or like great builder at a company?
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, we do see like researchers being like probably like the most important maybe persona at the end of the day of
Mhm,
like, hey, the researcher wants to work with you and likes what you're doing. Everything else is so much easier, and if not, it's like pulling teeth.
mhm,
So kind of our researchers, making sure our researchers are happy is very key to us.
mhm,
Um, what I've kind of noticed is that the people who really like look at the data and understand how their data is being made seem to
mhm,
have much better outcomes, much faster promotions,
mhm,
than folks who are like, "Hey, I don't really wanna, like, concern myself with the underlying, like, I just
mhm,
wanna go build this product or answer this research question or do a thing." Um, but to the extent of, like, hey, the people who are kind of hosting office hours with the talent
mhm,
seem to really understand their domain much better than people who do not. The people who are kind of like really just taking time to go like look at data all the time of like, hey, I want to go see what data is being fed into this model. Um, those researchers who are kind of exhibiting those behaviors seem to have had much more success so far at OpenAI and other places than those who did not. And so there's almost a pretty direct correlation when I kind of look at the top researchers that I think really did have a big impact at OpenAI. Almost all of them were really in the weeds with both their research aspects and then like what was going into that from their other partners like human data.
I wonder, so, like, as for, um, I guess, like, when you're recruiting the best researchers, like, what are some quality that the companies are looking for? And how do you guys kind of, like, work with each individual company? So, like, for example, let's say call it like a OpenAI, like, do they just give you a list of people that they're like, "Hey, we want to hire these type of people," and then go find it, like, in 3 days, and then, like, "We'll pay you X," or, like, how do you guys, like, kind of, like, do the
Mhm.
contract or, like, collab? Obviously,
Yeah.
without giving crazy details, but
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
the
yeah.
vibe, or, like, the general direction of, like, how you guys, like, kind of work together.
Yeah. Well, it might be. Let me. I might have had a misunderstanding a little bit. So the people that Mercor places within a research lab are
Yeah.
usually less about like the you know on salary kind of researchers who are getting all
Mhm,
the OpenAI like equity and all that stuff.
mhm,
Like we're not trying to go place those people within 3 days. We're
mhm,
placing the people that have domain expertise
mhm,
in the areas that the researchers at a lab
mhm,
want to improve their model in. And so we do less about like hiring researchers and more about finding the domain experts that the
mhm,
researcher needs to work with to produce their data. Because if you're trying to go make, for example, a better finance model,
mhm,
and you are a ML researcher,
mhm,
you probably know like the ML aspects of improving a finance model,
mhm,
but you have no context whatsoever about like, hey, why is the model doing this weird thing? And they're like, hey,
mhm,
how do I go get like examples of good finance trajectories? And so that we go find those finance people or those people across all these different domains to go pair with the researchers.
mhm.
Um,
Uh
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. So, no, I think the other part is, like, I went to, like, some of the, I guess, like, gatherings for researchers, or, like,
Yeah,
even, like, I hosted, like, something that, like, just, like, invited a bunch of researchers. I
yeah,
think the best researchers, like, they don't wanna leave their house. Like, it's, like, really hard to convince them to, like, actually go socializing.
yeah,
What would be the motivation for them to entertain with the idea of, like, obviously a job, or, like, at OpenAI, or, like, any sort of, like, top AI company is very appealing, but I think, like, for some of the best researchers, like, they're, like, harder to move. Like, how do you kinda, like, motivate people, as well as, like, how do you even test their skill on, like, applying them into real life? Obviously, you mentioned, like, a few things at, like, looking at the data, or,
mhm,
um, I guess, like, I don't even know what kind of data would people be looking at for the
mhm,
researchers. I
mhm,
guess that, like,
mhm.
just, like, their research report, like,
Yeah, no, yeah,
obviously,
yeah, that's a good
like,
question.
yeah.
Okay, I
Maybe
guess.
I'm, like, not very, I feel like
No, no,
I'm
no,
just, like,
that's
very
okay.
self-conscious of my questions, but
Yeah, no, all good, yeah. So I think, there's lots of different kinds of research one. So,
mhm,
I mean, you can take it with a grain of salt, but overall, um, when you are trying to improve a model, usually we have some kind of like data to go fine tune the model with or
mhm,
improve the model overall. And this is where we you basically want to kind of look at like the model's predictions, outcomes,
mhm,
generated text, whatever the case may be, and then kind of say, hey, does my data match? Does the data I'm feeding into this model to go train it to make it better match what users are actually going to be using this for? And so there's almost you have to kind of be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes of like
mhm,
if I'm a user of what I'm trying to research and build and prove out, what are the use cases that are going to matter? How am I going to go evaluate um, whether my thing is working or not? And even the act of creating evaluations for what you want to improve, it's like one thing that's like, hey, I want to make this better. Let me
mhm,
go try to do a bunch of stuff. I think the best researchers are going to usually have like, hey, here I'm going to go spend some time making like the test set, the evaluation of this. And now I want to collect data that will improve this specific evaluation. The evaluation they come up with though is really important because it's almost like a a product use case kind of study where like you want to know how people are going to be using this thing, what types of distribution will it see, what kind of like use cases are people going to apply this to. And so you really need to be in tune with not just the research aspect of it, but like how it's going to be applied. And so there are, to your point, some researchers who are, quite comfortable with like, hey,
mhm,
I think I can still do, the 80/20. I can still do most of it without having to do all the messy stuff of understanding my users and talking to people and looking at human data aspects. But I think the ones that really kind of rise above take the time to really talk with their cross-functional partners on
Mhm.
the product side, talk like think about the users, use cases, and kind of go from there.
Mm. I wonder maybe we could talk about like I guess like the other part I thought was really interesting was like you have worked at like these like three different fast growing companies. Maybe
Yeah,
we could start with like growing the revenue from 1 mil to like 100 mil.
yeah,
What does that kind of look like for 1 year? And it's not like how does a team kind of like split their own jobs? Obviously, there's like CEO, CTO, but like for the first like as you're like one of the first like 5 people, like what was that kind of like to build out the entire team and then um to grow the revenue from 1 to 100 mil?
yeah. I think there's lots of kind of wearing different hats kind of on
Mhm,
that journey overall.
mhm,
Um, like when we first got our non OpenAI deal, it was like, hey, we need to figure out how to go build some annotation tooling and go do the operations and go like
mhm,
actually run this. And so I had built kind of our first annotation tooling prototype in Airtable,
mhm,
just like hanging out, like, hey guys, I think I know how to go at least like pull this off. We had like 24 hours to go try to like pull off this whole like data collection effort. Like, okay, I think I can make the interface. Um, our head of operations, Sid, was also very kind of early and it's like, all right, I'll go find the experts. And then, it's like Sid and I hopping on um, calls with people. And I was like literally doing the expert onboarding calls myself of like, hey, someone needs to tell these people what we're kind of trying to do and help them
mhm,
like calibrate to the task and make sure that they understand the instructions. And so
mhm,
I think, part of it is rolling up the sleeves. It's like, yep, I will literally design the slides of this onboarding call and write the instruction doc myself. And I've done many of those in the past, but like that is what it takes on those early stages to just to kind of get the initial deals and revenue coming in. One of the things that I think really, for better or for worse, propelled a lot of like how Mercor's growth is. All these research labs are a pretty chaotic, fast-paced environment. Like stuff is coming up,
mhm,
changing all the time, and it just go, go, go like 24/7.
mhm,
And say what you want about that work mode, but we were able to match it at Mercor. The people that we had hired and the people that we were interviewing for, like, hey, like, this will be a high intensity job. It will be pretty chaotic. We'll get late night emails from our researchers who want to go reply that night still. That's going
mhm,
to be a dynamic on this side.
mhm,
And I think the researchers really valued our ability to keep up with their
mhm,
craziness that was happening in their life. Because their teams are going equally crazy. And it's like a whole, AI race right now.
mhm,
It's the ability to kind of keep up and match that level of intensity, I think, was a large part of our initial growth. And it's a high bar. It is
mhm,
not for the faint of heart, as you probably experienced yourself, Grace, in the past.
mm. For sure. For the researchers at Mercor, like what are they researching on?
Yeah. So we do have our own kind of ML and research team internally. Um, a lot of them are trying to work on this data flywheel piece of,
Mhm,
you almost treat the interview as a product. Like, hey,
mhm,
how the interview is prompted, designed, um, as a product itself. And
mhm,
then there's like the ranking of candidates and like vetting candidates and everything else that comes after that.
mhm,
So you kind of split a lot of our ML and AI focus. It's kind of
mhm,
doing those two things particularly well. We have some other researchers that are also trying to figure out how do we go. I have a strong opinion about how to evaluate models in general. I
mhm,
think a lot of times, research labs, you kind of realize that everybody's trying to figure it out. There is no one that just has all the answers. Everybody is trying
mhm,
experiments all the time. Even at the frontier, it's like, oh my gosh, it's this the top companies in the world, and they don't know how to do this either yet. They're trying to find out.
mhm,
And so the ability to kind of I think just kind of match that and help them inform like, hey, here's the strategies that work, here's the strategies that don't work. Honestly, I think it's something that Scale AI did pretty well. So when I was at Scale pretty regularly had blogs and benchmarks and papers they're coming out with of like, hey, here's how any lab can improve their evaluation of models in this way. And it's nice happenstance that Scale or Mercor can also help deliver that.
mhm,
But basically, the trying to pioneer new ways of doing evaluations or measuring. It's like AI productivity, for example, is something that
Mm.
we also spend some of our time doing.
How do you kind of like measure their research, like, or like the effectively put the research into product development or actually
Yeah.
turn that into revenue?
Yeah. Um, I think the startups like ours, it's very direct. Like
Mhm,
it is almost like an applied AI of
mhm,
sorts of like you're working with real data, the timelines are tight. There's not like this like, oh,
mhm,
go in the corner for 3 months and just do your thing and like hopefully
mhm,
it's useful when you come out. Like,
mhm,
nope. It's like our operations team relies on every single day the outcomes of our ML and AI team. It is critical for our own ability to go place the best people in these roles for these labs and in general at other companies to know how to be able to use this. And basically, our operations team is providing feedback to our AI and ML team um,
mhm,
every week. I mean, like tons of feedback. And our ability for our ML and AI team to kind of keep up, match what's important to the to the operations users internally at Mercor, that is a really key outcome. And then you can basically look at like one, if we had some evaluations that we've already made about where we want to get to, how well is our research kind of meeting those evals? But I think almost more importantly, sometimes it's like, hey, how responsive are we being and how like tied in to the operations and the business outcome is our research efforts. And I think there is a very close connection that has been maintained at Mercor.
mm. I wonder, when you were thinking about, I guess, like working at OpenAI, working at Mercor, and working at Scale, like maybe we could talk about the differences between these companies and then what are some like similarities as well.
Yeah, good question. So when I joined Scale in 2019, I really wanted a company that could kind of I could hustle at and it would kind of match my level
Mhm,
of intensity. I think I was
mhm,
still fairly early in my career and I was like, hey, I want to go like have these cool experiences. I'm
mhm,
hungry. I want to go like prove myself. And I found that most people at Scale also had that, similarity. They were
mhm,
also really wanting to go like build a career, have a big impact,
mhm,
work hard and see the results of that
mhm,
work.
mhm,
And that was something that I think really resonated with me. And, maybe as a similarity, I see similar kind of stuff at Mercor now, where
mhm,
the average age at Mercor is honestly pretty young. I think until 2025, I was the only person over the age of 30 at the company,
mm.
which is kind of crazy as we were kind of growing and everything else. All of our founders are like 22 right now. They all dropped out of college to go start Mercor. And so that was like people very clearly are like, "Hey, this is for better or for worse, my first job, and I'm hungry and I want to go after it." And so I think we've now been able to kind of balance like some more senior leadership, like myself and others, with that kind of energy and hustle. But I kind of like the fast pace. I want to go build something part. I think at OpenAI, it was similar in the way that um, everybody knew that the work they were doing was going to be incredibly impactful. All eyes have been on OpenAI for a long time now. So when OpenAI publishes something, when OpenAI says something, when OpenAI does a thing, people notice. For better or for worse, people
Mhm,
notice. They
mhm,
really kind of look to OpenAI as like, what is the industry going? And so a lot of the hard work and hustle comes from like, hey, wow, like, what an opportunity to go kind of shape how the world thinks about X, Y, Z. Maybe the difference at OpenAI is that a lot of people had already, for lack of better words, like done something cool, which is probably why
mhm,
they're at OpenAI. Like most people had already found some version of success, outcome, cool thing that they are kind of recognized for, have been recognized for, which kind of highlights, yep, hey, you should probably be, at OpenAI with other people like that. So a lot of
mhm,
people had maybe already had one of those kind of outcomes in their past. They might have kids, a family. They're probably a little bit later on in their career. And so I think the hustle was like less about let me go work weekends and late nights and all that because they have
mhm,
family, but there was a certain kind of caliber of talent and a recognition that the work they're doing is really important and impactful that I think
mhm,
led to like really cool outcomes too.
mm. I wonder, when I guess like going back to, I guess, like, the OpenAI job board situation, like, so I guess, like, what would be the future of recruiting
Mhm,
and talent management? And then, like, I'm sure, like, at, like, Mercor itself, like, people probably talk about, like, what OpenAI is building. I don't know
mhm.
if you have, like, any takes that are, like, you wanna share with the audience, like, what you feel like they're doing, and then why it is important or not important for Mercor.
Yeah. Honestly, besides just kind of reading the same articles, that I think,
Yeah.
you probably have read as well, I don't have any more, like, insight,
Mhm.
on that side, really. So I think, like, the people kind of on the team working on this and whatnot, but I don't think there's been, like, a huge, like, "Oh my gosh, what are we"
Mhm.
like, kind of moment at Mercor. So I think
Mhm.
our key strategy has been, and I think will continue to be, like, making the job matching for companies and for candidates much more efficient.
Mhm.
I think the founders, insight initially to go found Mercor was that this is like incredibly inefficient right now. You have to
Mhm.
go apply to all these jobs.
Mhm.
Companies have to go through thousands of candidates, and
Mhm.
just like this, the matching experience on both sides is terrible. It is
Mhm.
not really efficient. It's very slow. It's very like just not great for anybody.
Mhm.
And so if we were actually able to kind of centralize how companies are finding talent and how talent is finding work, that in itself is a huge, huge opportunity. And we're really excited to be kind of focusing on that, as we get started here. And so our goal is not just to provide, you know, human data, like people for researchers. Our goal is to really just fix how people find work and get work,
Mhm.
and or find talent and get work. The other part is, for better or for worse, AI is kind of like breaking almost every version of traditional applying for jobs in the first place.
Mhm.
There are tons of startups out there hanging out. You can go pay $5 for, that will go
Mhm.
auto apply your resume to like every job that remotely matches under the sun.
Mhm.
And like, I'm gonna have to deal with that. That is a
Mhm.
reality now, for better and for
Mhm.
worse.
Oh,
That is
yeah.
possible with technology to do. So we need to
Uh,
figure out what to do about it. Go ahead.
for sure. The other problem is, like, I think I was chatting with another, person at a VC firm, like, they were trying to hire someone, and then almost all the resume have, like it's, like, ChatGPT written, and then,
Yep.
like, there's only one person who eventually got hired. It was, like, actually wrote the answer themselves. So that's, like, how I guess, like, the
Yeah.
bar is, like, set right now. So I guess,
Yeah.
like, how do you guys think about, like, using AI to, like,
Yeah.
passing these interviews? Like, I'm sure even people doing Mercor interviews, they
Yeah.
probably use, like, a Cooley equivalent to just, like, talk about stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think fraud is going to be a really big thing. People kind of passing on experiences and insights that are not their own. And
Mhm.
so I think, one, we still have maybe a window now, at least, where a video interview is much harder to fake for 30 minutes
Mhm.
than a question and answer written down in paragraph form.
Mhm.
Because the paragraph form has like no chance of like not just being generated by AI. And
Mhm.
we even like, if we ask people to do writing samples, we also
Mhm.
still see like half of the writing samples are basically AI generated. The other half are different. Honestly, when you go review enough of them, you can almost see very
Mhm.
specific similarities of like, huh, these answers all have the same four bullet points because they all come from like the same ChatGPT model on this side, and
Mhm.
it's like almost comical about how
Mhm.
similar they are. Um, but there's a window right now where the video case study that's dynamic is harder to fake and also provides a much richer signal. And so I think that's one part of the answer is like, okay, the proof of work
Mhm.
when I go
Mhm.
ask questions live is there. The other part, frankly, is that there is still fraud, hanging out.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so if the interview seems really unnatural, like I ask you a question and then you take 15 seconds to go answer me back every time, I will probably be suspicious. Like, if I was
Mhm.
watching this recording, I'd be like, "Huh, that seems pretty sus." I no person actually interacts with another, like, thing like this, without cheating or doing something weird in the middle. And so we actually have some of these, like, fraud detections as well. We have kind of a human fraud team that, like, kind of looks at all the things that were flagged as potential fraud, and then
Mhm.
kind of, like, says, "Yep, this person," when you actually watch the recording, is very clearly looking at the screen over here, cheating or doing something weird.
Mhm.
Um, on that side. So we've been able to kind of build up a fraud muscle as well. I think the
Mhm.
other part is just people just completely faking their experience, on the resume. Like, um, I went to MIT and I got this cool experience and I worked at Microsoft for 3 years. And like, when this person has like a LinkedIn profile with like 20
Mhm,
connections and clearly has nothing online about any of their work whatsoever.
mhm,
And so you also have this like, how do you know who's even like legitimate on their resume or what those experiences are or are not without doing some really cumbersome background check thing that's just
mhm.
not really scalable.
For sure. Do you think LinkedIn is safe? Like, in the future, like, can you walk us through, like, let's say if I want to find a job, like, how should I do it? Versus, like, if I'm a company, I'm trying to find a job or like find a candidate, like, what's like kind of like the workflow for everybody to match?
Yeah. I think LinkedIn has leaned into the social part pretty thoroughly, which is interesting. Like a lot of their money that gets from the ads and the recruiter stuff. If
Mhm,
you have used LinkedIn recruiter
mhm,
search, you know that the filters are less than effective. It is
mhm,
not a great experience, I think is objectively fair to say, to try to go like filter for somebody on LinkedIn to go like recommend that they apply for your job. Like even at OpenAI, I was using LinkedIn Recruiter for this, and that was hard. There, it was actually genuinely hard to just use it right now. And so I think in terms of the job matching from a companies finding people side, I think that is ripe for disruption.
mhm,
Probably has been for a long time, if we're honest. But I think, especially like ripe for disruption about how do companies find talent overall, and like moving beyond LinkedIn for this. The other part I think is, as a candidate, there's actually not that much more of a moat. Whoever has the most comprehensive list of jobs kind of gets it. Um, our hope is that you don't need to apply for every job. We can actually recommend you for jobs. Like, hey, I'm open to jobs, and I want to go. Like, we will say, Grace, I think this is actually an amazing job for you. You've already taken the interview. We already know about your skills and experience, and we already have your resume and file. Here are 5 jobs we think you should apply for or that you'd be a good fit for. And so it's
mhm,
almost kind of flipping this dynamic of like, hey, let me go send out my resume and spend hours and hours applying for stuff. Of course, the flip side of that is like you still want to be in control of like your own destiny. So we can't
mhm,
just like wait for AI to go give you a job. Um, but I think can we have better recommendations and better matches for you? I think is kind of what we're going for.
mm. How do you do the vibe curating? So I feel like a lot of the times, like when you're hiring, especially for like the more junior jobs, like
Mhm.
people are um very it almost is always about like are you matching the vibe with the people who is hiring you, right? So like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so like can you be a good culture fit to like start with? How do you guys like kind of like do the vibe curating for the companies?
yeah. Well, I think and it's right to point out, like currently today, the best
Mhm,
approach to going through lots and lots of applications is this kind of vibe fit. And then the other
mhm,
part is like, I will just filter to only the best schools. I will filter to
mhm,
only the best previous experiences.
mhm,
Because what you end up with is like this talent density question. There are loads of people who have amazing experiences that do not go to an Ivy League school
mhm,
or have a Microsoft internship
mhm,
previously.
mhm,
And but finding those people, there's a lot of other people that are not maybe great at the job,
mhm,
in that same pile. And
mhm,
so you kind of basically just have to go apply filters and be very pragmatic about how you go find the best people
mhm,
because it's too slow to go review everybody or give everybody a chance. One of the big things that I'm excited about is that we actually give people a chance. It's like, hey, we actually got interviewed you, and I could not have paid a human to interview you, but I can have AI interview you. And now that I've actually done an interview with you, I know that you're amazing. While you
mhm,
haven't had these experiences yet, like clearly based on this interview, you are actually like leagues above other people that maybe happen to go to some Ivy League fancy school or whatever else.
mhm,
Um, and I can start to kind of rely less on these kind of hard filters or the kind of vibes boosting because everybody now has a more equal playing field to kind of share their experience in an interview versus just, you know, where did you go to school? What were your last 3 work experiences?
mm. How would you suggest people to like prep themselves for the interviews
Yeah.
with AI?
So yeah, we actually like the page that you had highlighted earlier in this pod actually is our practice interview page.
Mhm,
And so we actually want to basically give people like unlimited. practice interviews. Of like, if you
Mhm,
want to just interview or practice for
mhm,
any kind of job, yeah, those interviews can be taken for free. You can take them a
mm,
limited amount of times. We're not making our money from the practice interviews. We're not even using the practice interviews for like anything. We're just like, hey, have a practice interview, go
mhm,
take it, see, you know, ideally it translates to in 2025 real interviews that you actually might do with a human, the old school way. But they also are a good preparation for how AI might interview you in the future and how our AI interviewer works today as well.
what would you say would be the challenge that you'll be facing to scale it, like, at, like, a LinkedIn level? Because I think, like, why personally I'm using LinkedIn is, like, not just because, like, I need a job per se. Well, obviously, everyone's always needing a job or, like, needing a client, right? So, like, I think a lot of it is more towards, like, showcasing your ability to do certain things. So, like, one day when an opportunity come to you, like,
Yeah.
you kind of, like, already prove yourself. Like, it's kind of like an online resume, right? So, like, it's like you're building, 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 and then that's why people are, like, building on Twitter or LinkedIn just so that, like, their friends or, like, people that they try to impress can see it.
Yeah.
So what is a social element for, like, something like Mercor? Because I think, like, it's kinda, like, beyond the interview, right? A lot of it is, like, you stay in touch with people. It's kinda like a social network effect.
Yeah.
I wonder, is that, like, even important for you guys? Or, like, for, like, the OpenAI job board or the
Yeah.
job related news, like, I guess, like, what would be your take on, like, the future of, like, these kind of platforms to grow into, like, the
Yeah.
social aspect or some sort of, like,
Yeah.
pre-job meeting
Yeah.
era?
Yeah. Um, that's why I don't think LinkedIn's gonna go anywhere anytime soon. I think the social element of LinkedIn and just, like, having that on LinkedIn is probably gonna
My
remain for
god.
a long time. So, like, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, this company's just gonna, like,
Mhm,
be like, have no purpose." I think it will have a purpose.
mm,
Honestly, our the way we want to kinda monetize and grow the business ideally does not require a social element to be there. I think if you went back in, like, LinkedIn's history, the ability to go add the feed was a very strategic decision on their part of like, "Hey, this is how we're going to go grow our network and grow people," and, like, we want to encourage kind of people being social and sharing their experience overall,
mhm,
because that's required to go, like, build the top of funnel and
mhm,
make money that way. Um, our approach and monetization does not require advertising to work. We
mhm,
don't need to have like, the traditional kind of job board and ads,
mhm,
um, to make money on our side. So I think we're focused less on the social side right now and just kinda plan on, like, we really wanna be darn good about engaging people, talent matching, finding people with work, first and foremost.
mm. I want to be mindful of the time. Maybe we could wrap with, like, one real question and 30-second fun round for you.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll end with, like, what is the future of, like, Mercor? Like, since, like, you guys already grow into, like, 100 million revenue in, like, the past, like, 11 months,
yeah. That
and
number is actually really old now, by the way. We have
a lot more?
meaningfully surpassed,
Okay,
that was just the last, like, public thing from, like, January, I think. So,
yeah.
yes.
How do you guys think about, like, growth after that?
Yeah, we are
Also, you
now
can talk about, like, the work efficiency as well, like, so, like, how many people are there, and then,
yeah,
how do you guys kind of, like, be efficient, but also, like, making
mhm,
huge amount of revenue?
yeah. So we're at about 250 people now, split
Mhm,
pretty evenly between India and our US office. We have some South America and some other parts, shared as well.
mhm,
But yeah, honestly, our biggest bottleneck right now is on the operational side, probably. Like, we just really want to be able to launch more projects with our customers. We want to be able to say yes to more opportunities. So we
mhm,
are continuing to hire at a very rapid rate for operations, for engineering, for kind of project managers throughout the life cycle. So I
mhm,
think that, yeah, it's kind of still very much up and to the right. Growth is basically still just accelerating at an extremely rapid pace there. And so we're hiring and have a bunch of jobs on our career stuff. Um, I'll do the hiring plug. But yeah, we see so much opportunity, I think, both with these AI labs and beyond, to really grow their business and kind of shape how experts are sourced, engaged with, and ultimately able to go improve the AI models. So that's been fun.
mhm. Amazing. On that note, let's do, like, a 30-second fire round. What's your favorite book?
Harry Potter.
Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Mm, oh my gosh. Um, okay, can we skip this one?
Oh god, what?
I
Okay,
don't know.
who
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
who made the biggest impact in your career?
Mm. My first manager at my kind of small B2B marketing startup, he brought me in and was like, "Hey, Sean, there's a path outside of engineering to explore here," and he really put me on that path, and I'm very grateful.
Where can we find you outside of work?
Um, Probably walking my dog. I got a new dog over Thanksgiving, and I love the dog so much. So, um, that is a thing. Also, I, like, love food. If you invite me to food, I'll probably say yes. So,
Love
um,
that.
yeah.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming to the show today. It's so fun to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. Thanks for having me. All right,
Okay,
I'll see you
let me
later.
quickly and